Good morning, everyone. Britt Simon here. First time in a couple of weeks, I'm going live. I missed last weekend because I was traveling. I took a few days off in Europe. I was actually in Gran Canaria in Spain. So I had a very nice and well-deserved break. So let's take some of your questions. There's a little bit of news that has happened over the last couple of days. Some of you will have been aware of a plan to charge $250 to enter the Greencard lottery in future years. This was part of Trump's big beautiful bill that's anything but beautiful. And then there was going to be a $400 charge for submitting a DS-260. Those aspects of the big beautiful bill have been taken out of the Senate version. First of all, they said that those particular pieces need to have a 60 vote threshold. Wouldn't be part of the normal reconciliation process. And then they've taken them out. They've gone from the Senate version of the bill. So I think we can fairly confidently say goodbye to that. Now, there is a possibility that they try and do something else. There's a possibility that that they try and move ahead with a modified version once it gets back to the House. There's a possibility of those things. But the fact that it came up and was recognized as being something that didn't fit within the reconciliation bill is a good thing. Now it's on the radar. I think it makes it much harder to put that back into the bill in any format. Okay, so that was the first bit of news I just wanted to bring you. Let's see what other sort of questions do we have. Do we still have hope for DV26 or the potential banned countries? Right, so you say the potential banned countries. Are you talking about the 36 countries that are, that the Trump administration are considering a ban for? Those countries are not banned, right? The countries that we have banned is the 12 countries and the 7 countries, a total of 19 countries where the travel ban is in place. Other countries may be added to that list over time, but I can't speculate about that. Those countries have got to do different things in order to stay off the ban list. For DV26, I'll tell you what's happening in DV25. People that are turning up to interviews from banned countries are being refused. They've been given final refusals. To be perfectly honest, they're handling that wrong. And there is an aspect of this that is possibly illegal in the way that they're handling things. And I know that Curtis Morrison, if you check out his website at Red Eagle Law, you will find that Curtis is starting to onboard some clients who've been unfairly treated under the travel ban just recently. I haven't discussed it with Curtis, so I'm not quite sure what his rationale is for challenging the overall ban. I'm not sure if that's possible, or whether he's simply trying to sort of help those people who've had visas revoked, which shouldn't have happened. And I've pointed out in my Twitter feed that shouldn't have happened. But nevertheless, it has happened to some people. They had visas issued prior to the ban. Those visas weren't physically in their hands yet, and so the government and the embassies revoked those visas. That was absolutely explicitly called out in the travel ban wording to say they would not do that, but then they did it anyway. So it's clearly wrong, and I think Curtis would be very successful in suing on that basis. But from reading between the lines of what he said, I think he's planning on attacking the overall ban as well, which would be a brave decision if he does that, if he tries to do that. So anyway, if you want to know more about that, check in with Curtis himself. He's active on Telegram channels. He's active through his website. You can certainly check in with Curtis about that. All right. So yeah, if you're DV26 and you're under a travel ban, not a potential travel ban, but you're under a travel ban, then at the moment, yeah, you're in trouble. You're banned. And some people, sadly, are turning up for interviews thinking that they can get a national interest exception. They can't. That's not a thing. People need to understand that. It's not really, it's not a viable option for the majority of you that think you have a good reason for an NIE. Your idea of a good reason is not the government's idea of a good reason. They don't care if you are a nice person. They don't care if you've got family and friends in America. They don't care. They wanted to ban you. They are being shitty people, and they are being deliberate about that. So, you know, the only people that should be for DV lottery, the only people that should be turning up for an interview at all, in my opinion, in DV25 and probably the beginning of DV26, is people that have a legitimate passport, second nationality, and a passport on which to travel. Okay. And I stress the word legitimate because some of the stories that, you know, where some of you have, I've had conversations with people. I can barely like understand how I could be sort of getting across to these people. There's people who say, well, yeah, I've got two passports. I've just obtained a second nationality, but my birthplace in that second passport is different to the birthplace that I've already got in my existing documentation. I'm like, how did you manage that? How did your mother give birth to you twice in two different countries? How did that happen? Oh, that didn't happen. You mean you lied to fraudulently obtain a passport? And they're like, no, I didn't lie. Like, what other explanation is there? You can't be born twice. You know, medically, that's not possible. And even if it were, I'm sure it would be very painful for your mum. You know, no. You know, if you've got two different places of birth on your passports, it's because you've lied. There's no other explanation. It's not a mistake. You know, some people are like, oh, it's not, you know, it's just a lie. And what it means is it's a fraudulent document. And when you present fraudulent documents to try and get immigration benefits, you commit immigration fraud. And that's very, very serious. So some of you need to just stop and think, do I want to get myself banned for life from America? Or do I want to just like say, look, for now, I'm just, you know, this wasn't meant to be for now. Maybe I'll find some other path in the future, right? Think a little bit before you go and fuck up your life for the sake of, you know, fraudulent documents. It's just nuts. Okay, let's answer some of these. Do I want to answer these sort of questions today or not? Any luck for 25K in Asia, lot 2026? Look, we don't know anything about how many selectees there are for 2026 yet. Okay, we don't. Which means anybody in the internet, and there are some companies, there are some websites, etc., who are giving information that they're just making this shit up. There was this lottery website the other day that told someone there were 62 people in the queue at Frankfurt, and that's just a fucking lie. They're just, you know, some website, and it's not the first time I've seen this from this particular website. This particular website represents itself as expertise and an expert. I think it's called DV Lottery USA. And it's just full of a bunch of bullshit and lies said in a very confident way. So this lottery website, I guess it's a guy or, you know, somebody running this website, you know, told people that stupid things about predictions of 2026, that Oceania and South America will go current because they always go current. Oh, really? Well, just look at the bloody paperwork for the last few years then and see tell me how many times it's been current for Oceania and South America. Not very often. And so that's bullshit. And so you don't know what you're talking about. Then this company said that they have calculated the number of you know, people who are safe. So if you've got an EU 40K number or something in DV 2026, according to them, you're safe because they've calculated based on the number of selectees. Nobody has that, you fucking liar. Right? You're just lying to people, but you're making it sound confident. Let me give this website its 5 minutes of fame. Let's just be very clear about who I'm talking about. Let's do that, because somebody running this website needs a kick up the arse and to be told, stop fucking lying to people. And you've already got me to swear 3 times this morning. So, and I'm sorry, Philip, if your kids are listening, or anybody else's kids that are listening. Oh dear, hang on, I've got to hang out with my wife. Oh dear, that's not going to go down well. So, yeah, let me just show this. Let me show this screen here. Ching, 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 ching. Here we go. Okay, let's go through this, because this is kind of funny. It's just like, why people do this sort of thing is beyond me. I don't understand it. So here's the website, DV Lottery USA. If you go and listen to anything said on this website, you're a fool, because this is so obviously stupid information. Answers given in very confident ways, but just stupid information. So firstly, oh dear. Hang on 1 second. Sorry, excuse me. Let me just. 189. Okay, sorry about that. Right. So this is looking ahead. DV26 safe number of predictions. Africa up to 50,000 safe, 70 to 80,000 likely with country exceptions. Oceania and South America and all numbers safe. Bullshit. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Europe all up to 40,000 safe. Bullshit. They don't know what they're talking about. They have no information to make this assertion. They have zero information. They don't have any inside information. Please, like, whoever is running this website, just stop. You're just fucking lying. And then when challenged, I've got a worrying guy from Italy that sort of asked me loads of questions, and he asked a question on here. Where was this thing? He asked a question on here. I saw the response, and it's just absolute bullshit. It's like, let's see, no more comments. Let's see if I can get some more of this. Right. How do you have data on DV26 data? I'm wondering if you can see this. Maybe I should make this bigger. So this guy, Marcos, asked me the question of how they could be saying that they know about density and so on. They don't know about density. They're just lying. So some experts like Brick Simon, that's me, always say we can't know anything about the DV selectee density for DV26 until July or August feasibility. Correct. That's 100% correct. Right? There's no one who can tell me anything different to that. Okay, so then this guy says, our 40,000 safe zone projection for Europe isn't pulled from thin air. Yes, it is, you fucking liar. It comes from a tried and true modeling approach we've refined over the last 3 DV cycles. Shut up. Last 3 DV cycles. Like, you've had 3 years of experience and now represent yourself as a fucking expert. Piss off. I'm a bit salty this morning. We start with an actual number of European selectees published by the by the State Department in May. Now, everybody who is a DV 2026 or a DV 25 candidate knows that that's bullshit, right? Everybody knows that because they didn't publish the actual number of European selectees in May. They didn't publish that. So where are you plucking that from? Actually, I'll tell you where you're putting it from. You're plucking it from thin air, exactly what you said you hadn't done. So then you factor in the program's fixed visa allocation. Fixed visa allocation, wrong. It's not a fixed allocation. It's calculated by a formula. Apply the historical interview no-show rate, around 10 to 12%. Okay, you've got that from me. And then map those variables, translate into high case number gaps, blah, 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 blah. The consistency gives us strong confidence that if the pool size and the processing capacity this year's tracked past patterns, Europe's cutoff can stretch to the high 30,000s, around 40,000. It's just complete bullshit. And so Marcos asked me, and I said, you don't have that. Where can this? And so he's gone back. Says, where can this number be found? Is it actual data by the State Department or unofficial polls or something, right? And they've never answered that. Actually, it's not Marcus, it's somebody else who did that. But they never answered that question because it's unanswerable, because it shows that everything they just said there was bullshit. Everything they said, this DV Lottery USA, so it's just bullshit. Like, why bullshit people? Why pretend you know something and you just make yourself look bloody stupid? And that's not the only problem with this website. There are many. I got fed up reading it one evening, and then bumped into it again when they made some other ridiculous assertion, and somebody quoted them. Just complete nonsense. So please be careful, everyone, who you listen to. There are many people that know some things about DV Lottery, but many of them are too stupid to know what they don't know. And that's exactly the situation with this DV Lottery website. DVLotteryUSA.com. You're a bunch of charlatans. Okay, so there we go. Which documents do you need from your sponsor? So, Diana, you are talking about with the I-134. With the I-134, which is an affidavit of support, and DV Lottery can use that form, but not the I-864, right? So with the I-134, a sponsor should give to you their photo ID, which can be scanned and emailed. They can scan and email all these documents, actually. So photo ID, the tax report 1040, or a W-2 for last year, right? Both of those things cover last year. But because those things cover last year, you also need recent payslip information, payslips or paid documents, information that shows how much money that person has earned year to date. Okay, so that's the documentation that's needed: 1040 or W-2, recent payslips, and photo ID. Okay. What do you think is most likely for AF next VB? A, current; B, high cutoff, e.g. 60k, or C, low cutoff, e.g. less than 60k. Could be any of the above. What do I think is going to happen? Okay, I've been kind of explaining this to people, and I wrote up a sort of fairly. Somebody put out there a sort of an estimate that they had made in a kind of a dopey way. The way of estimating that they had done was a mistake, but the conclusion they drew was that the government are probably going to underfill. And the conclusion was correct, even though the method to get there was incorrect. Basically, there's a very high chance, I think, at the moment, that the government can or will underfill DV 2025, meaning that they won't issue all of the 52,000 visas. The reason for that is that they've put themselves stupidly into a position where they probably have an embassy capacity problem for the final month, September. They need to schedule, to get to the 52,000, they need to schedule around about 8,500 people, 8,500 people as a minimum. And that's not even taking into account that there will be more refusals because of the travel ban than a normal month, right? So even if we look at, let's have a look at some data. Let me get rid of this stupid freaking website from my browser for a start. Got myself in a bad mood by looking at that stupid thing. We'll look at Zaresius's data that he published on Friday night, right? And I'll explain this. If you've been listening to me for a while, you'll know that at the beginning of the year, I was talking about this number that is down there. That number, in order to issue the 52,000 visas, that number for the total number of people scheduled needed to get to about 65,000 people. And I've done the math again just recently, and I was absolutely spot on with that number. It needs to be about 65,000 people, because if you take the number of issued visas with AP cases, we're just under 33,000, right? Nearly 4,000 people have already been refused. And there are 16,000 people who are in ready status. However, of those 16,000 people in ready status, 5,000 of those are people that should have already had their interviews in previous months, meaning they are no-shows from previous months. There are only, therefore, about 11,000 people who are scheduled for the next 2 months in July and August, right? Now, from those 11,000 people, there will continue to be no-shows, around about 10%, 12%, as that other website correctly said. There'll be no-shows. So, there'll be less than 10,000 of the 11,000 will actually show up to their interviews. Probably less than that now because of the travel ban. And so, out of those 10,000, we'll then have some sort of refusal rate, which again will probably be a little bit higher, let's say 10% now. So there'll be another 10% loss. So, they can get maybe at most, they could get 8,000 issuances from those next 2 months. If we just ignore 221G for a minute, and let's say that of the 221G cases currently going, let's be extreme and say 3,000 of those get issued over the next 2 months. I very much doubt that's going to happen, but let's just be optimistic. So 3,000 from there and 8,000 from these people that will be scheduled for interviews in July and August, that are already scheduled for July and August, right? So that gives us 11,000 to add on to the 33. That takes us to 44,000 issuances. That's basically the math, right? So with everything already in the hopper, with all the people already in the hopper, they get to about 44,000, maybe 45,000 at the very most, right? That's if everything goes really well and they clear all these 221Gs, and they won't. I mean, they're not going to clear all of them for a start. They won't, some of these will stay in place till the end of the year. And many of those would be people who are now travel banned, right? Like Iranians, for example, who are now travel banned. So they'll just get refusals, or they'll be left in 221G until the end of the year. So we're not going to have enough issuances. There's going to be 45,000 at the very most. That's even if you want to take the most optimistic version of this, call it 45,000, which means there's 7,000 left. And out of the 7,000, about 1,000 will go through adjustment of status. That would leave us 6,000 visas left. So if you get 6,000 visas issued in September, you have to schedule at least 8,500 people. You have to, and 8,500 people gets you to my 65,000 number, which means it validates what I said at the beginning of the year and my earlier thinking, right? So it's not just me trying to revalidate what I had said previously. It's actually recalculating the math and saying, could this happen? In the easiest, in the most optimistic way. Now, what does it take to get 8,500 people scheduled? It takes over 4,000 visa interviews being arranged, 2NLs. It takes that many cases, over 4,000, right? Now, the derivative rate in Africa is much lower than the derivative rate in EU, so it does matter how those 4,000 2NLs are comprised. But I can tell you that they still are not doing enough interviews in any of the regions, right? They're not sending enough 2NLs. So, for example, in August in EU, they've sent about 830, I think it is, 830 2NLs for EU. For the month of August as a whole, across all the regions, they set up 2,500 visa interviews, right? 2NLs. 2,500 2NLs went out. So 8,000 or 8,500 or people, which is 4,000 visa interviews, would be a hell of a lot more than they have done any time this year. In fact, it would be higher than any number I've ever seen in any month ever. Right? The highest number of 2NLs I've ever seen, the highest number of people scheduled for interview I've ever seen, has been about 7,000 or 7,500. So they've put themselves into a position where they have to do a completely record-breaking number of 2NLs to even, threaten the 52,000, right? So that's strong tar. That's the sort of the background of my answer, right? Because you're asking me to pick a choice between A, B, and C. Will they put Africa current, or high cutoff or low cutoff or whatever? And I wanted to explain where the math is, because what I'm about to say is going to piss you off, and I thought I might as well give you some good information, right? What I'm about to say is I have no freaking idea what they're going to do to solve this problem. I have no idea. A, B, or C, any of those wouldn't be a surprise to me. None of them would be a surprise for Africa. The one I think is most likely, is what I call a Hail Mary, which is your option A, maybe option B. I can't see why they would do a low cutoff. You imagine you're running this process and you're about to have a shortfall, right? And you're going to underissue visas, and you think maybe someone will ask, well, why did that happen? Why did we not issue enough visas this year? It would be nice for you to say, well, I don't know. We made Africa current and we did everything we could to try and issue all the visas. We made these other regions, we gave them really high numbers, which is what they've done the last 2 years, by the way. That's what they've done over the last couple of years. They made Africa current where they didn't need to make Africa current. They made other regions with high numbers, like EU got 50,000 1 year, absolutely absurd number. But it wasn't used by every embassy. There was not enough embassy capacity to cope with that. But this is what they did over the last couple of years, right? So they pressed the Hail Mary button. And Hail Mary, by the way, for those of you that don't understand the term, there's sort of two contexts in which you can say Hail Mary. Or talk about a Hail Mary. One is when you go to church and you do Hail Marys. That's not what I'm talking about. The Hail Mary I'm talking about is in an American football game, typically. At the end of the allotted time, at the end of the game, there's a few seconds left at the end of the game, and the side who got the ball have got like one last chance to maybe pull off a miracle and maybe win the game, right? And so they're way back from the end zone, and the quarterback throws a massive long pass down to the end, right? It's called a Hail Mary because everybody knows what's about to happen. It's the only thing they can do. They've got seconds left in the game. It's the only option left, right? And so they throw this, complete gamble of a throw down to the other end, hoping that one of their team will catch the ball and run it into the end zone or be in the end zone to get the points, right? It's a last possible chance to win the game, right? And so for KCC or the visa office, this is what it means to throw a Hail Mary. It's to set up the numbers to a ridiculously high number that can't possibly be matched by embassy capacity, but at least they did something. Right? They gave it their best shot. Now, remember, they've created these dopey conditions. They didn't have to do this because they actually were ahead. All this year, they've been ahead. They've had a very good year up until a certain point when they were supposed to step on the gas, and they didn't step on the gas at all. They let it just trundle along. And so they've created this condition where they either deliberately underfill DV 2025, they deliberately underfill it, or they press the Hail Mary button to have some plausible deniability for themselves to say, well, why didn't it fill, right? Now, let me be clear. Nobody gets in trouble for underissuing visas. Nobody at KCC or the visa office or any embassy is going to get in trouble if they don't issue all the visas. They don't have to issue all the visas. They can underfill. In fact, out of the last 25 years, there's only been 2 or 3 years where they seriously got close to the cap. In fact, in 2 years they exceeded the cap, and nobody got in trouble for that either. In the vast majority of the years, more than 20 out of the last 25 years, they underfill, right? So the fact that they might underfill is not really a huge problem for anyone. It's just that after the DV 2020 and 2021 lawsuits, the government seemed suddenly to be interested in showing that they were doing all they can to issue all visas, right? But the current administration don't give a shit about DV lottery or any immigrants, right? And so maybe everybody, in the embassies is feeling a bit more, a bit less concerned about actually showing that they're doing a good job, right? And so maybe they relax into a point where they deliberately underfill. That's a possibility, which is your option C, strong tar. Hail Mary is either option A, current for Africa, and high numbers for EU and for Asia, or maybe just a high cutoff number, like a 75K or something in Africa. Maybe not a complete current, but they may as well just go current, frankly. So if, you know, I shouldn't answer this because, you know, it's one of those things where people say, well, you said this. Here's what I think. Your question says, what do you think is most likely for AF? With the caveat that I don't really know whether they want to try and hit the cap, the quotas or not. And with the caveat that they pretty much fucked that up already. They can't hit the cap, right? There's just literally not enough embassy capacity. With that caveat, okay, I think if I had to really sort of answer the question, if you put my feet to the fire on this, I would probably go with option A. I'm half expecting to see Africa made current. I would be least surprised out of those three options to see Africa going current. I think if that happens, we'll also see a high number in EU and Asia in particular. Asia can't fill its quota now anyway. Asia's got travel ban problems all over the place, right? So Asia can't fill. And unfortunately, because of the timing of the travel ban, there's no time to recover the visas, that will be denied in order to make those sort of add to the capacity. So Asia's going to underfill. It won't even hit its quota. Africa's going to underfill. It can't hit its quota. There's not enough. There's not enough people issued. We're too far away. The quota for Africa is 23,000, right? And so we're at 14,000, just over 14,000, with 7,000 people at ready status, but many of them are no-shows. Some of them will be travel banned. And there's 1,500 people in 221G. I mean, it's just, they can't get to 23,000. So Africa underfills. Asia underfills. Again, same problem here. Lots of people are going to be refused. This number here is going to be increasing quite rapidly over the next 3 months. And the ready status includes a bunch of people who are travel banned, many of whom would be smart to just stay at home on their interview day, not go to their interview because they're just going to be denied, right? So EU is miles away from its quota of 18,000, but about 3,500 of these 5,000 people are actual interviews lined up. There's quite a few of these that are just no-shows. Some of them are travel banned, right? So they can't, they can't get to it. EU needs an extraordinary final number of 2NLs to get close to its quota. It's probably the closest, but no. I don't think it's going to get to the quota either. I think, even if they do a current for Africa and they do high numbers for EU and so on, I don't think they're going to hit the quota anyway. Which, by the way, is another question I get often is, are the visas going to run out? No, the visas are not going to run out. They can't. There's not going to be enough capacity in the system to issue all these visas. Oceania and South America could benefit from this sort of chaos that goes on in the three big regions. There could be some additional visas available for Oceania and SA, which does mean that we might see an Oceania, for example, above 2,000. That could happen. That would be the Hail Mary version for Oceania, right? Mathematically, that shouldn't happen. Mathematically, none of these things I'm saying about should happen, right? So if we see an EU number in the 30s, for example, mathematically, there's no sense in that. And capacity-wise, there's no sense in it either. But when they do a Hail Mary, what it does, if you do a Hail Mary, there are going to be some embassies that will have a calculable capacity where they get X number of cases per 1,000, and that's going to continue. And they have a limited number of scheduling slots at that embassy, right? those embassies will not reach the highest numbers because of the limitation on their embassy capacity. Then there'll be some other embassies, some smaller embassies that don't have a good number of applicants for every 1,000 cases. You'll see they sporadically get a number of cases. And those embassies can go a bit further. They can go a little further towards a high cap. And so when you see at the end of the year, when you see the final data, there will be some embassies, small embassies, ones that we don't even talk about very much, with very few applicants for the year, but somehow they'll have gone to the highest numbers. And those will be the ones that have extra capacity that sort of lifts the region as a whole, a number of those smaller embassies doing a bit more. So funnily enough, we've not seen the limits tested. People have been talking to me about Frankfurt Embassy. And Frankfurt this year is only scheduled, I think, 27, let me check that. I'll talk about Frankfurt in particular. People are bound to be asking about Frankfurt, so let's have a look at that. Frankfurt only scheduled as a maximum 27 in the month of February, 27 cases, right? Then in the month of May, they took 21 plus 2, that's 23, and the 502, the May 2nd, that's the previous month. So that's like an April thing. So in April, they took 20. In March, they took 8 cases. In February, they took 27. In January, they took 9, 23 in May. And then they didn't take any at all so far in June. Now, this June thing has thrown everyone for a loop. So there's 2 things I would say. Number one is the capacity of the embassy seems to be about 27, but we don't know that that's truly the capacity of the embassy because the visa bulletin hasn't moved fast enough to stress Frankfurt in terms of its capacity, right? And it was keeping up with the numbers until June. Then inexplicably, it said, well, they haven't taken any in June for August interviews. We don't know why. I have no idea why they've done that. They could still take those cases. There's time left over the coming week for them to take a few cases for August, right? And if that happens, it'll happen in the next week. But if you look at the capacity estimate, not the capacity, the cases per thousand, showing here for just EU. I mean, they do other stuff as well, but just for EU cases, we'd call that just a little bit above 8 cases per thousand, right? So if they only have capacity, let's call that 30, right? Or for round numbers, let's say 32. Let's call it 40. Let's say if they could do 40 a month, which would be a lot, that would be they could move 5,000 numbers in a month. Well, okay, so if the VB was 30,000 and they're at 19,000, they don't have capacity to get to 30,000. Right, in 1 month. If they don't take some cases now and get to 22,000 for August interviews, and they left all of that work to happen in September, even if they had a massive September and they'd said, oh, we'll take 60 cases, that's not going to be enough to get to 30,000, right? Because that would be 11 times 8, 88. They'd need a capacity of around about 80 to 90 cases to get to 30,000. You see the point? So capacity starts to be a problem at some of these embassies. And in Frankfurt, that's particularly going to be the case if they don't take August interviews for whatever reason. And they haven't yet. We don't know if they're going to. I have no idea why this has happened. And it's weird. Frankfurt have been a reliable embassy for years. So, there's a guy called Mike who talks on the Telegram channels. He is, I think, more than 50% convinced that that Frankfurt are going to take cases for August, and he may be right. But this next week is the time when they need to do that if they're going to do it at all. Okay, so that's sort of an explanation of why capacity becomes a problem, and it isn't a problem at some of the other embassies. And so that's how a Hail Mary can help a region as a whole. And it also allows AOS cases to go ahead in the States. So it uses the capacity within consular processing network where it's available, where the capacity is available, but it will create a situation where some, even if let's say they went nuts and said, EU is current. I don't believe that's going to happen, but let's say they did EU is current. Then many of the embassies in the EU would not be able to get anywhere close to the highest numbers because they just don't have the capacity. And there would be a few embassies in the EU, the smaller ones, the weird small ones that we never talk about, and they would get, perhaps much closer to the highest numbers because they've got more flexibility about their capacity. Their capacities are measured in the 1 or 2 or 3 per month, right? That's how many they normally get. So if they have one bump a month where they get 15 cases, it's only 15 cases, and the interviews take 10 minutes each at most, right? So they can go much further. They can treble, quadruple, quintuple their normal allocation of cases quite easily with just a busier Tuesday kind of thing, right? It's not hard for them to do that. Whereas the bigger embassies that have a lot more work on a consistent basis will struggle to double and treble their capacity, which is what can happen during a Hail Mary. Okay, so there you go. Good question, Strongtar. I went down a whole path there of answering that, and I'm hoping that was useful for other people that have asked or will be asking similar questions. Okay. Do I have a chance for 2NL54K Africa Tunis Embassy? Yes, I don't know about Tunis in particular, but the number has a chance for sure. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Chris. Patrick Ndong says, hi, Brett. How do you see the June 14th Trump new travel ban concerning 36 countries affecting upcoming DV lotteries? It hasn't happened yet. So, Patrick, I don't know whether that's one of Trump's empty threats. He's called Taco over here, right? Trump always chickens out. Taco. We call him President Taco now. So he says things and then chickens out. So he loves to throw his weight around. And in the immigration space, unfortunately, he does have a henchman by the name of Stephen Miller, who's a piece of shit, an absolute piece of work, racist as could possibly be, and definitely has one of these pointy hats at home. I mean, he definitely does. Without a doubt, this Stephen Miller guy is a complete piece of work. And unfortunately, Stephen Miller is actually sort of in charge of a lot of the immigration policy stuff for Trump. So when Trump comes out with a bad idea, it's because Miller had the bad idea. And Miller is therefore quite powerful in this space, unfortunately. So the 36 countries have been threatened to be put on a ban list unless they do something, right? And the something that they have to do in some cases is pretty easy for them to comply with, and in some cases is not going to be easy for them to comply with. And so we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But there is no additional travel ban for those 36 countries at this time. Okay, that's all I can really say. Do you know anything about what's going on with Kenya for the interview? No, I don't. I'm tremendously disappointed that Nairobi didn't get into the game this month. Are they going to do it for next month? They're going to try and save some cases. I hope so, but I have no idea. I have no reason to say one way or the other that they will or won't get into the game. Okay, Philip. Hola, Simon. Welcome back, Nice Tan. I do have a nice tan, actually. Under my wrinkles, you can kind of see I'm whiter than normal. But thank you, Philip. I'm sorry about today's session, by the way. If your kids are around, it's never good to swear, right, kids? Don't be like Uncle Simon, because Uncle Simon's a naughty boy, and he shouldn't be swearing as much. But he's a bit, his wife's away, and she's still in Spain. And so he's feeling a bit fruity. I don't know what's going on. So I'm sorry to Philip's kids. Hi, sir. And DS260, I forgot to mention my YouTube channel that related to gaming in the part of social media. Is that a problem because I have an interview next month? Look, earlier in the year, I tell people to unlock the DS260 and fix the social media. Make sure you're fully transparent. And these days, more than ever, it's important to be transparent with your social media when you're going for an interview, right? Here's the downside. Here's the downside, right? There was a case recently of a guy who had a green card, who was speaking anti-Israel rhetoric, supporting Palestine, etc., in the genocide that's going on in Gaza right now. And I'm not talking about October 7th. I'm talking about the 20 years that led up to October 7th or more, really, and then the slaughter of innocent people that's been happening since then. Okay, October 7th, I agree, was a horrible day, perpetuated by a bunch of scumbags. But that doesn't mean you go and bomb the life out of a whole area because you can. Right? Israel's a piece of shit. The government of Israel is a piece of shit. Nothing against Jewish people. Nothing against Judaism as a religion. It's as bad as any other religion, in my opinion. But the government of Israel are scumbags. Right? I mean, they just are. And so, when this green card holder from Harvard stood up and started talking about that, he was arrested and they tried to deport him. And they tried to take, or I think they may have actually succeeded in taking his green card status away. And what they do to do that is they say that you lied in the application to get that immigrant benefit or a non-immigrant visa. So if they can show that you had certain beliefs, but you hid those beliefs because you didn't give all of the social media, then they can say, well, you hid that information from us, and therefore we can go back and we can take away your green card, right? So it is not smart to try and hide any of your social media information. That's the point I'm trying to make. The digression about Israel is a different point. But the point is, it is smarter to be fully transparent. Because if you've given the information, if you can stand up in court later and your lawyer can defend you by saying, well, hang on a minute, my client gave all his social media history. If you chose not to go and search that, to realize that he agrees with Simon that Israel is committing a genocide, if you chose not to check that, that's your problem, not his problem for hiding that information, right? Now, if I were right now, I've always been outspoken, right? I'm a US citizen now, and so I can say whatever the hell I want. But when I was a green card holder, or when I was a visa holder, because I was here on H1 visas prior, I was still outspoken then. But we didn't have the loss of freedom of speech that we have today. We have lost some freedom of speech. We've lost it. It's gone because the Trump administration think it's okay to lock people up because of their opinions, and they're doing that left, right, and center. So these days, I think me saying what I want to say is one thing. I'm a citizen. I can say that. And also, I'm not, if America threw me out the country, I wouldn't care. I can live anywhere very comfortably. I don't care, right? But many of you are not in quite the same position I'm in, and therefore need to be a bit more careful about what you say in your social media profiles and that sort of thing. At the moment, because Trump is in place, you've just got to be a bit more careful, because they actually believe, and the Rubio, the piece of shit, believes it's okay to strip people of their immigrant and non-immigrant visas because they are critical of a foreign government. Can I just underline the word foreign? How the hell is a problem of freedom of speech to be critical of a foreign government is beyond me. We're entitled to, in fact, we're required to be critical of our own government, let alone other governments. It's it is legal in this country, and it's been tested right up to the Supreme Court, that you can burn the American flag in the street if you want to. If you want to protest, and you've got some reason to protest, and you want to go and burn the American flag, it's your legally tested constitutional right to do so. It is a requirement of all of us, of all the citizens, to speak up against our government's tyranny. Right? We don't want that sort of tyranny here. Thank you very much, Trump. and all your followers. We don't want that, right? This is supposed to be a country where you're supposed to have freedom of speech. But right now, we've got this sort of fight going on between Trump and crew doing whatever the hell they want and trying to ignore the courts for as long as possible, and getting some help from the Supreme Court, who has been heavily stacked in Trump's favor. And so we have, for a few years, we're going to have a bit of a fight about being able to say whatever the hell we want. So whilst it shouldn't matter what you say, and it shouldn't matter what is in your social media profiles, you probably want to think about, if you're asking for a green card at the moment through the DV lottery, you should probably think about what you've been saying or what you've been liking or what posts you've been reposting or whatever. And if you see me, for example, being critical of the Israeli government, don't repost it. That's my opinion. And if you disagree, by all means, thank you very much. But I'm entitled to voice my opinion, especially on my own YouTube channel. Thank you very much. So I did it again. I'm sorry, Philip. I'm sorry. I'm sorry again. But yeah, it's like, just be a bit sensible with your social media profiles and give a little bit more information. But anyway, we breathe football. What should you do at this very moment, right? Should you unlock at this point? No. You've already got your interview lined up for next month. They've already done the background checks on you. In order to unlock right now and make those changes, you could not do that through KCC. You'd have to do that through the embassy. And quite frankly, it's a waste of their time and yours doing it at this point. If it had been earlier, I would have said, yes, unlock and make sure that your social media profile is complete. But, unless they bring it up at the interview, in which case you fall on the sword and you say, I'm sorry, I missed it. Oh, really? I didn't have my YouTube in there? I'm sorry, that's remiss of me. I do gaming stuff. That's all it is. As long as your gaming isn't killing people in Israel, as long as that's not your idea of gaming, then then it probably is innocuous, right? But nevertheless, you just have to take responsibility. Oh, I messed up. But it's not a big deal. That's very, very rarely going to end up in any sort of refusal, right? So at this point, I wouldn't change that if I were you. I also wouldn't bring it up in the interview. Okay, but for anyone else and for DV26 candidates, please be open and transparent about your social media profiles, because you don't want to create a paper trail that says you tried to hide something, right? It's very important that you answer all these questions and that you answer the DS260 questions correctly and fully. Don't give it your own interpretations of what you think is important to tell them or not, right? Don't do that. You're creating a problem for yourself. Okay. Africa, case number 35K. What's the possibility of interviewing Abu Dhabi? Abu Dhabi is a bit of a sad case this year. They're massively backlogged. I don't think they're going to get to 35K, frankly. Where are they right now? Let's see. Abu Dhabi. Let's see. Africa. For Africa cases, they've got cases up to 16,000. They've got one case at 42,000 and something that's a transfer from Doha and Muscat. It's actually an interesting case. If you go look at, let me show you the data. If you look at Zaresius' data, this is for Africa, for Abu Dhabi. They've got cases up to 16,000, and then they've got this one case at 42,000. It's actually 42,250, something like that. And I ran the history for that because Zaresius has a little tool that we can do that with, bless him. And it shows that they were originally scheduled at Muscat. About a week after that, and that was in May, about a week after that, they then moved to Doha, or 2 or 3 weeks. And then a week after they moved to Doha, they moved to Abu Dhabi. Really weird. But this just goes to show that when you transfer, and a transfer is what happens between two embassies, it does not involve KCC. It's when you've been scheduled at Embassy A, you then get yourself transferred or moved to Embassy B, right? And there's a special CX status for it and everything. Transfer in progress. And when that happens, you don't have to go into the AV queue again in the embassy, because the AV queue, remember, is controlled by KCC, and a transfer has nothing to do with KCC because you already got scheduled in one of the embassies, right? And so the inter-office move between one embassy and another embassy, called a transfer, that does not involve KCC and does not involve the AV queue, and does mean that you can randomly get a case like this appearing in a high number. And you can see it in other cases too. You see it at Ankara and other places where people have played the system smart and they get the interview where they want to be interviewed, but they are massively higher than the rest of the backlogged entries. Now, going back to Abu Dhabi and your question about 35K, let's do some math here. Let's look at that, and we say the average number of cases there for Africa. I mean, they've got more cases, right? So they get a lot of AS cases in Abu Dhabi. But just for Africa, they're taking, sort of what, 10, let's call it 8 cases per 1,000, per 2,000, 4 cases per 1,000, right? So if they were to go from 16,000 where they currently are to 35,000, right? That's 20,000 cases, which just for African cases, not talking about Asia at all, just for African cases is going to be about 80 cases, right? Then Asia, Asia has got a lot more. They got per 1,000, they got at least 50 to 60, and so there just isn't the capacity. If we look at the capacity for Abu Dhabi, there is not the capacity there that is going to get us to 35K for Africa, right? So, long story short, Nadesh, you're not going to get interviewed at Abu Dhabi. You're not. Now, unfortunately, you're already current, and you're probably therefore in the AV queue, the queue of cases in AV status, which means KCC won't help you to move embassies. The only hope that you have, well, there's two things that you can do. If you have a US visa, like a B1, B2, then get your ass on a plane, get to America, and adjust status in America. That would be your only real chance that way. Your other way is to try and find an embassy that will take your case, but you have to convince that embassy not only to take your case, but also to ask KCC to reassign your case to them because they've decided you're locally present or whatever else, right? It's very, very hard to achieve. It does happen a few times, but not very often. I see a few people a month who are able to achieve that. You need literally the embassy to email KCC on your behalf, or at the very least give you an email that says something like, yes, we've accepted your case based on the proof that you've given that you are locally present. We've accepted to take your case, and please contact KCC to ask them to reassign your case to our embassy. If you have an email like that you can forward to KCC, then KCC might take you out of the AV queue. They will take you out of the AV queue if the embassy asks that same question, if the embassy directly writes to KCC. So, but in order to convince an embassy to do that for you, you probably have to be physically present in the catchment area for that other embassy, and you have to prove that you're there and that you'll be able to legally stay there without a visa or whatever else until the interview, and you have to have your medical there and all that sort of stuff. Now, time is running out. You've got almost no time to achieve that. So if you want to try and achieve that, Nadesh, get on it like today and tomorrow. Figure out who you're going to ask, and you may want to get to that country in order to make this happen. But like I say, my first choice is if you have a B1, B2, then come and adjust status, and if you have the funds, come to America and adjust status. That would be the smartest way. Okay. How to avoid public charge concerns for Africa, Algeria, DD26, case number 61K. There's a lot of time to think about this, but generally, you're not going to be interviewed for a year, right? For a year from now, at least. So just you'll have time to learn. But NI 134 is probably the most useful way to allay any fears about public charge. That's probably the most useful thing. I don't know whether Algeria Embassy commonly asks for that or not, or other finances, but you should prepare to provide it anyway. Okay. Barb Bubakar, it's been a long time. What about the final VB for Africa in your opinion? I already answered that in detail earlier, so I'll leave it with that. Hi Simon, we're stuck here at Nairobi Embassy, current since the first DV25 bulletin. Oh my God. That's horrible. Sorry, I'm reading this one. I'll go back to the other one. I'm reading this one. Current since the first DV25 bulletin. I'm waiting for Nairobi. That's horrible. They did 421 cases. I got a weird memory for things. I don't know why my brain works like this. I can barely remember my wife's name sometimes. But this is what I'm talking about. Nairobi took 421 cases in, I think it was November of last year, for November interviews, and then have done not a thing since. That's really unforgivable. I'm hoping that they'll do something in the final month, but I can't guarantee it at all. I have no reason to know that one way or the other. I have no inside information. I got sort of mini attacked, not really attacked, but someone was critical of me in a sort of roundabout way the other day because I had told people about Nairobi. I think, and I told people about Nairobi and my belief that I had earlier this year that they would come back online. I think every time I expressed that belief, I also said that I had no actual reason to make that statement, and therefore I couldn't guarantee that that was going to happen. But to those of you that ignore that second part and say, well, Simon told me for sure that Nairobi are going to take cases. If you relied on that and you took my word on it or whatever, it's not what I said. But if you relied on that, then I'm sorry for that. I don't, it's terrible that you lose out. And this is one of the problems I have with people taking my statements out of context. People only listen to what they want to hear. And so very often I'll say a two-part answer to a question. If I'm not rushed, I'll try and always do that. Sometimes I'm just lazy and I blurt out my thinking without blurting out the second part, right? So I'll say, yes, I think Nairobi will do some interviews, soon. That's what I said in the past. But I've then usually taken the time to say, but I've got no proof of that. I've got no reason to believe that I can show you. It's just a gut feeling. And you shouldn't be making a gamble based on my gut feeling necessarily. And so some of you wisely moved to different embassies, and that's fine. I'm glad some of you did that. But for Mum's Boys, sounds like you didn't do that. And yes, we've got 1 month left for them to do something. So fingers crossed for you. I hope you get through. Chu Rena says, hi sir, my case number is AF 80,288. Do I have a chance to get a visa or should I just give up? I always crease up at this should I just give up thing that people add. Should I forget about it? Should I, I sometimes say to people, if I said yes, you should just give up, would you give up just because some random guy on the internet says that? Would you really? That's weird if you would, because if some random dude on the internet said just give up, I would probably still watch the visa bulletin. I would probably still watch the process personally, but that's just me. And what does giving up look like anyway? Does giving up mean that you don't even open the email when they send you the 2NL because you did get through? You don't even open. I'm not going to read that email. I'm not going to read my 2NL because I gave up already. And I am true to my word. I've given up. What do you mean you give up, right? Unfortunately, the curse of this process is that some of you are destined to wait until the very last minute, and there's nothing you can do about that to improve your situation. Some of you just have to wait. Even if I tell you mathematically you don't have much of a chance or any chance, you still have to wait. You still have to watch the process, right? It's just that what I say has hopefully lessened the pain, because you will not do things like selling your cars, selling your goats, your house, or whatever is important to you. You know, you don't make changes because this random guy on the internet said you may not make it. That's just a way of preparing you for what might happen. It's probably going to happen. You're probably not going to get your green card, because many people don't, right? Out of 130,000 people selected this year, only 52,000 visas are available. A lot of people get selected and don't get their visas. That's how this process works, right? It's just obvious. So, you have to bear that in mind in this process. DV 2026 selectee, K12 something. K12, what does that mean? 12,000. Okay. Is South Sudan fully banned by Trump or not yet? I always get these two countries. No, it's Sudan that's banned, not South Sudan, isn't it? Oh, man. Travel ban. I get these countries mixed up, and I want to make sure. Let's see. Trump travel ban, which are the countries? Travel ban, blah, 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 partial ban. Where are we? Oh, man. Why am I reading this website and not just looking at my own website? Sometimes I'm dopey. Travel ban, 19 countries affected. That's the one. And let's read. Yeah, okay. Right. So it's just Sudan. It's not South Sudan. Yeah. Everyone else knew that. I'm tired. I'm jet lagged. I had a 30-hour travel day. It was an absolute nightmare. The travel thing just went badly wrong all the way through. About 30 hours of traveling. Anyway, so I'm tired from that, so apologies. But yes, South Sudan is not banned at this point. It's Sudan that is banned, not South Sudan. El Hadji says, how are you doing, sir? I have an 80K case number for DV26. Can it be scheduled for interview? We don't know, is the honest answer. I showed you that dopey website earlier that said all sorts of things. We don't know, quite frankly, at the moment. We know roughly what the case number ranges are. Yes, seems like Africa is over 100,000, but we don't know how many selectees there are. Therefore, we don't know the density rates, etc. And so anybody who tells you whether you're definitely in right now or definitely not in right now, they're not knowledgeable people, right? And I don't know enough, so I don't know whether you're going to have a chance or not yet. Okay, you have to wait and see how many selectees we have, and I suspect you'll probably have to wait until we're going to know that in about a month's time, 6 weeks maybe. We may know in July. They may publish the selectee numbers in the July visa bulletin, the one that gets published in the next couple of weeks. But it's more likely to be the one after that, the visa bulletin for August. It's published later, so that will be in about 6 weeks' time. That's probably when we'll know something. We'll know the selectee numbers. But for your case number, you may have to wait until we see the actual distribution. The distribution of the holes, etc. And then you'll have a better idea. Clearly, you've got a high-ish number, right? So, but we just don't know how high it really is. Okay. Trump feels like KCC held AF region back by keeping Yaoundé Embassy at 50K. Yaoundé took 320 interviews for July and only 135 for August. I think Yaoundé could have done more, say 320 like last year. What do you think? Yeah, all good points. When the visa bulletin isn't as advanced as rapidly as it should have been, and that is the case this year, then we can't really know the full capacity of some of these embassies because they've kept current, they've kept up to date. But what more could they have done, right? If they were really pushed, that's what I was explaining with Frankfurt earlier. 27 was what they took in February. That's the high watermark for the year. But what could they have done if the visa bulletin had advanced further? What was their actual capacity? the 27 isn't the number, right? It's actually higher than that. We just don't know how much higher than that it was. Okay. So yeah, good point. Talk about that. Hi Simon. DV selecting 2425, case number AF 32500. I've not received 2NL. Do you think it's Kenya Embassy? So we don't know what's going on at Canberra. Kenya Embassy, I already spoke about it. Tunisia, you already asked. What are your thoughts on 2026 2126 case number for SA region? Also generally about the visa issuance from the SA region. It's probably not a bad number, but we'll have to wait and see until we've got more information. Okay. Hybrid Simon, thanks for the timely updates. Regarding the introduction of the 250 and the 400 fees, how far with this abortive plan? Yeah, so the 250 and the 400 won't be happening. In my opinion, they've pulled it out of the reconciliation bill, and it becomes very difficult for them to get legislation through when it's not in that reconciliation bill. And there's just not going to be good consensus about, immigration changes. There's always an argument. It's very difficult for them to get immigration changes through Congress, especially when Congress is so deeply divided at the moment with such extremes. As Trump has pushed to the right and caused a lot of extremism to surface, a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment, a lot of racism and that sort of thing. That's happened. But there's also been a bunch of crazies who've gone more to the left. Now, I'm not that far left personally. I'm somewhat centrist. But when you push the political positions at the edges to the extremes, neither one of those things are a good thing. Politics is best when it's somewhere in the middle. In all honesty, you don't want nutcase leftists any more than you want nutcase rightists. You want something more in the middle. Now, sometimes it's good to have good orators, good politicians who understand how to put an argument together from the left or from the right. I've admired many politicians that were like that were good people to have in a room debating because they push a certain point of view in an eloquent, good fashion. But I don't want them running the freaking country. Nearly did it again, Philip. I don't want those people running the country personally. I don't want extreme right-wing people or extreme left-wing people running the country. It would be a mess. But I want to hear from them. I want to hear their perspectives and opinions. Yeah, sure. But anyway, Godwin, the 250 won't happen in my opinion. So we can relax about that. Okay. Greetings, sir. Please, my case number is AF37 something. My case number is Abu Dhabi. Please, do I have a chance? I already explained this to somebody else, Ember. No, you don't. And I think you've got to move. Okay. 2025 AF54K Cotonou. No backlog now. Was hoping to get a chance for September interview. Just worried about the suggested travel ban since from Uganda. Well, okay. Hang on a minute. So I got to go back to my list here. Uganda. Why are you talking about Uganda? Uganda is not on the list. Is Uganda on the list of 36? We'll have to wait and see whether that comes in. But at the moment, I don't believe many, if any, of the 36 countries will be added to the list. I think this is just an empty threat by Trump, personally. But we'll see. I'm an Afghan. I'm a refugee in Kenya. I'm a DV26. When you tell me what I should do. Well, when you ask vague questions, you get nothing but vague answers. I could tell you, for example, to drink more water and do some yoga, and that would be a perfectly valid response to your question. Please tell me what I should do. Do about what? Please be specific. You have to be specific. I can't give you an answer to such a vague question. I would like to ask you a question. I had an interview appointment 16th of June, but I was not attended. Why not, lucky boy? Why didn't you attend? Due to my country ban. Okay, yeah. Your country is banned. You didn't attend. Yep, that's probably a good thing. I'm planning to get a new passport, unban one, and attend the interview day with my new one. Now, lucky boy, don't do anything stupid like obtaining a second passport with bullshit application, etc. Don't lie in the process. Don't fraudulently obtain a second passport, right? Now, can you then reschedule your interview? Maybe you'll be able to do that, but would you advise me to try, since dual citizenship not affecting the ban? Yeah, if you've got a legitimate, and I underline the word legitimate, way of getting a second citizenship and getting a passport before the end of September, then yeah, go ahead and do that. You can definitely do that. Okay. 1 VB left and more than 11k cases in AF. The cutoff for AF is less than 60k. That will be about 7k cases stranded. In what way can KCC describe the selection and processing of DV as efficient? I don't know that they do describe it that way. I hope not. It's not efficient, clearly. What will be the next VB of September for Nepal? Is there any chance for 11.2k from Nepal? Yeah, there's a chance. Might go current. There's no reason to limit Nepal. The region of Asia is not going to fill because Iran is now banned. So all of those cases that are in 221G from Iran, they're now out of luck. And all the remaining cases that have been scheduled, they're mostly out of luck, right? Unless some of those people have got dual citizenship and a second passport. It's not enough to just have dual citizenship. You have to have the second passport for that second citizenship, right? Because you have to travel on that passport. That's where the visa should be stamped. You should be traveling on that second passport, right? So yeah, Iran's not going to get very many more visas issued. So a lot of the 221Gs that we're currently seeing in where are we at? In Asia, a lot of these 1,100 cases in Asia, they're Iranians, right? So they're not going to get a chance. So yeah, there's a chance that Nepal could go current, which is about what it needs to do to get to your number. Okay. Okay. Any updates about Nairobi interviews? Nope. No updates. Stefan, how you doing? EU 21K, got my interview in Paris on the 12th. That's good. Thank you very much for the process. Fingers crossed for Philip and Roberto. And I see Stoic as well. He's about 26,000. So yeah, three guys that some people will have seen. We had a conversation on a video a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago. I'd like to see all of them get through, and that means we've got to get to 29.1 in EU. I think that's going to happen. I actually do, for all the reasons I explained earlier. So I will be very sad though if it doesn't. So, okay, hi sir, I'm on 2025 Abu Dhabi Embassy, case number is 38K. Please, do I still have a chance? No, you don't. Oh, but Ember, your number is going up even in this video. You were 37 earlier, and did you also ask the question about 35? But your number's going up constantly, so that's not a good sign. You don't have a chance. You need to get the hell out of there. What is Embassy's current experience after Trump administration policies? I can't. That's another vague question. I have no idea how to answer that. Yanet Santana, presumably Cuban Yanet. That's yeah. Oh, good. Read ahead, Simon. Stupid. I was just reading your name, assuming it sounded Cuban, and then say greetings from, and then I read greetings from Cuba. Well, greetings to you, Yanet. I'm sorry about the travel ban. I assume you're aware of the travel ban. It's stupid and it's shameful, but it is what it is. Can 2NL still be available for the 1st to the 10th of August for DV25 since being left July 2NL? Yes, they can. In some months, we see at the beginning of the following month. So the cadence is this, and this is mostly for DV26 people, but also DV25 people that have been living under a rock. The cadence is the visa bulletin is issued between the 8th and the 15th of the month. Immediately after that visa bulletin is issued, we begin to see 2NLs. And those 2NLs normally come out roughly in an alphabetical order based on the name of the embassy. So Addis would be early, Accra would be early, and so on. It doesn't have to go in that alphabetical order, but it generally follows that pattern. 2NLs then continue over the next 2 to 3 weeks and generally finish up by the end of the month, roughly. But it can, in some months, go, particularly towards the end of the year, it can be that we'll see 2NLs in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th of the month following the visa bulletin. So that would mean, for us to see visa, we could see, for example, August interviews being scheduled this coming week. It could still happen. Okay. Felix, hello, Britt. I'd like to ask, where have the Senate reached on the big beautiful bill, which some of the clauses proposed changes? Has it been stroked out? Yes, it's been stroked out. It's gone. Determination Tales. Hi, Simon. With the latest SEAC update, do you still think Asia will stop around 16, 17K like you predicted earlier, or could it go beyond that? So what I'd said earlier is that mathematically it should stop at around about, between 17 and 20 was about my number range. I think mathematically that's still going to be right. But there's somewhat of an impact by the travel ban. The travel ban won't have time to deny the people and recoup those visas, right? It's not going to have very much time to do that. But the fact that they've been overly harsh by denying visas immediately at the interview, but for some cases during this month, might mean that there's some reclamation of slots going on, maybe, and that could push the number a little bit higher. I think they'll also get some sort of Hail Mary effect. Remember, in Asia, there's like 3 countries, that matter. One is Nepal, and Nepal will probably get close to its cap. The second is Iran, and Iran is now banned, right? And there's also bans for other countries in what I call the rest of Asia, and I treat as one other country. The rest of Asia is all the rest, right? And there are travel bans in that group as well. And so it's like, where are these cases going to come from? The rest of Asia group accounts for about 1/3 of all of the selectees in Asia. And one group is going to max out, Nepal, right? The other group is impacted by the travel ban. And then rest of Asia is also impacted by the travel ban. So, where are the cases going to come from? But do they have the time to really push that into the visa bulletin? Not really. They don't. They don't have time to go around the loop, to schedule the cases, to deny the cases because people don't have dual citizenship and they're banned, and to then reclaim those cases back through the system. They don't have a lot of time to do that. And so, the visa bulletin won't be as heavily impacted as you might assume from the travel ban. It might have a little bit of a change, but not much. We could still see a number between 17 and 20. I could easily see that. I could maybe see a little bit more in Asia, but whatever they do, there's no time for them to meet the cap anyway. So, it's definitely underfilling. Oh dear. Abu Dhabi Embassy will be fine for Africa. What are you talking about, Frankie? I've just explained earlier. It's not going to be fine. If you think Abu Dhabi will be fine, I'm sorry, you're not paying attention. Hi, boss. Any chance for EU 27.3, Hong Kong DV 25? Yeah, you got a chance. You obviously need to see a good visa bulletin number, but we're certainly within striking distance of that. At 22 to 27.3, we're within easily striking distance of that. So out of the 3 guys that I mentioned earlier, Roberto, Stoic, and Philip, Roberto and Stoic should definitely be okay, right? They're both under about 26, I think. 26, 27, maybe your range, 26.5 or something for one of them. Philip's the only one I'm really worried about at 29. But I think even he will be okay. And if he's okay, you'll be okay, right? That's how that all works out. So, yeah, let's keep praying. Yeah, by all means, keep praying. It's pointless, but keep doing that. Hello, sir. Can I apply for non-immigrant student visa if I happen to be a derivative applicant on an immigrant visa and decision has not been made yet? Yes, you can. you can apply. But in practice, the DS 260 that was filed on your behalf for the immigrant visa can cause additional problems for you to be approved. So it's possible. It's possible that you get through, but it's not guaranteed. Okay, let me answer one or two more questions, and I've got something to do, so I have to stop and do that. EU32K, have a chance? Yeah, you have a chance, Sandra, because of this Hail Mary thing, but that's what we've got to see. Okay, any other good questions other than do I have a chance? I'm just going through. Okay, I talked about Frankfurt. So I covered that one. Sandra, yeah, again, you've got a chance. Just wait and see, right? I'm not seeing any. All right, well, let's just finish off with this. Any news on the 250 fee? I've mentioned this twice already in this video. The 250 fee is gone. The $400 fee is gone. Those things won't happen now. It's not part of the reconciliation bill anymore, and I don't believe they'll be putting that through in any other way because they just don't have the sort of the votes, etc. All right, I've got to go and sort my wife's flights out, so I hope you forgive me. We've been on for nearly an hour and a half. I hope this was useful for you. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Appreciate that. My subscribers now are about 93,000 or something, and I'm now. I was never bothered about this before, but now I'm close to 100,000. At 100,000, you get a little plaque, little YouTube plaque, and I don't know why, but that's become something that's interesting to me. So even if it's only for that, just to reward me for all the time I've put into DV Lottery over the last 12, 13 years. Could you please make sure my subscriber numbers go up? That'd be good. Make sure you subscribe and tell your friends. I'm funny, and I'll try not to swear as much as well. I'll try not to swear. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good day. Bye bye now.